The afterlife and reincarnation. I have had many experiences with the afterlife. It literally seeks me out. For a long time, I have had a profound interest in the afterlife and its workings. I constantly had to work with the smallest details. By bringing all the details together, a story emerges. The first thing I want to talk about are the dimensions. The life we lead on Earth has two layers to its existence. We have the dimension of life, and in the background there is the dimension of death. As living people, we are not aware of the existence of the hereafter, but the hereafter is aware of our existence. We don't see or hear them, they do see and hear us. The afterlife also has two outcomes. You remain behind on Earth as a soul, or you enter a portal that returns you to your true origin. The fact that the soul of man remains on Earth was already known to the ancient Egyptians. Yet, they were mistaken. Only bad people remain on Earth. They remain stuck in the life they have led. They often continue their negative behavior and terrorize the living. The afterlife on Earth is a form of a prison or hell. Souls who enter the portal completely disconnect from the life they have led. They come into an environment that is purely all about love. People who have had a near-death experience indicate that this feeling is strong and overwhelming. People also describe having 360-degree vision. They see everything around them, which indicates that the soul is no longer limited by the eye sockets. Thoughts are telepathic. Everyone can read and hear your thoughts, but the same also applies the other way around. In the heavenly paradise, there are no secrets. Everything is known to everyone. There is even an archive, where you can look back on all the lives you have led. The question is, what exactly is life? This Earth has many life forms. 1.5 million different animal species have already been discovered, and we still have a long way to go. This also means that we, as souls, can experience life in many different ways. We can be reborn as an animal or as a plant, should we as a soul choose to do so. Every being brings its own unique experience. I see life as an excursion for the soul, with many options. Before souls reincarnate, they are sometimes given an overview of their upcoming life. They are assigned a script and pick the name they want to bear in life. Everything revolves around free choice. For people who remain behind on Earth, fate is decided. They ultimately have to deal with karma. What you sow is what you reap. It therefore happens that some souls remain stuck in a negative spiral because the soul refuses to adapt. Everyone ultimately gets what he or she deserves. In the afterlife, again the rule seems to apply. It is all or nothing. The Shadow Man. My first conscious experience with the afterlife took place around the age of 21. My uncle had just died, and I temporarily moved into his apartment until it was sold. I watched a soccer tournament over the summer with some friends. We decided to light up a joint, and I wasn't used to that at all. After inhaling twice, my world was already starting to become blurry. I felt like I was living in the 70s. Even the soccer on television had that 70s style. During the match, I got tired and decided to close my eyes. The moment I closed my eyes was the moment I heard a loud noise screaming into my right ear. I immediately woke up and suspected the person sitting next to me. I quickly saw that he was fully engaged in the match, and I quickly realized that it couldn't be him. Then I was like, whatever. I closed my eyes again, and again I heard that scream, roaring loudly into my right ear. The sound was very similar to a gas burner, but it was more chaotic and raw. It was a kind of noise that cannot be produced by humans or animals. When I woke up again, I saw, out of the corner of my eye, that a black male figure was standing at the doorway. I could only see the silhouette. It was a pitch-black energy, which did not allow any form of light to pass through. It was completely solid in that sense. I immediately pointed towards it and alerted my friends to the fact that there was something standing at the doorway. Of course, they saw nothing and dismissed it as nonsense. They thought I was imagining it, until they had to deal with it themselves. The experience with the Shadow Man forced me to slowly become familiar with the afterlife and its workings. Yet, at that moment, the penny did not drop. I didn't pay attention to all the things I was experiencing. I kept going on with life, as if nothing had happened. When it comes to ghosts, I always thought they were transparent and white. In my experience, the figure was solid black. I know, from my own experience, that these are very negative beings. As I already indicated, the afterlife on Earth is hell. It is a neutral area, dominated by the negative. By neutral, I mean that beings from other places in the universe can thrive in ours. When people talk about angels, they automatically talk about a high vibration. When it comes to the afterlife, demons are common and angels don't seem to exist. Rumor has it that angels cannot handle the low vibration and run the risk of losing themselves. For angels, there is simply too much at stake. When it comes to demons, they feel at home and know no enemy. When it comes to the definition of angels and demons, these are beings that come from another planet or star. In other words, they are alien souls. When it comes to demons, they seem to have a true hatred of all living things. Demons also possess psychic abilities. They are also very capable of taking over the body of a human or animal. They have a tendency to drive you crazy. The goal is to get you killed and deny you access to the portal. They seem to rely on the energy of the soul. They also attack you when you are at your weakest. They come to visit you, especially during your sleep. It is the moment when you are completely defenseless. Demons are able to influence dreams, but they can also cause sleep paralysis. Demons are not necessarily tied to a place. They can cling to your body or soul. The latter means that it always travels with you, wherever you go. Many demons, by the way, have been summoned through dark rituals. The problem with this is that they are invited, but have no expiration date. In other words, they can thrive here forever at their will, and we have no ability as humans or as souls to banish them or send them back to where they came from. The problem with Christianity is the fact that it is not a religion of God. The title, Lord, refers to the god of destruction. In Hollywood films, the symbol of the cross is used to banish demons. In reality, the opposite happens. Demons are not afraid of this symbol at all, which is evident from the fact that they can freely manipulate it. There are many sources where the cross is turned upside down by an evil entity. If the symbol did possess power, demons would stay far away from it, but this does not happen. However, the true symbolism behind the turning of the cross is unknown to many. The Church has banned astrology, yet the symbol of the cross comes from astrology. The cross symbolizes the human body. When you bury someone, you put a cross on the grave to indicate that there is a body buried beneath. By turning the cross upside down, you indicate that you are an antibody. In short, everything must die. The next problem is that the symbol does not make the demons weaker, but rather puts them on steroids. So it makes it more powerful. It once again indicates that the Christian and Catholic faith is not focused on the positive in life. If you come into contact with a demon, know that no one can help you. In religion, the claim is made that Jesus was capable of many wonders of the world. Everything the Bible claims Jesus could do is something that cannot be imitated by any living human being. According to the Bible, exorcism is such a wonder of the world. In short, the Church indicates that it cannot help you with your problem, unless they are capable of world wonders themselves. Sleep paralysis. In life, I have often dealt with sleep paralysis. I had this experience when I was very young. I remember waking up and not being able to move. I was also unable to scream, only a soft squeak came from my throat. I didn't think much of it and closed my eyes, falling straight back to sleep. The next morning I woke up, I was completely rested. For this reason, I never thought much of it because I never observed anything. While staying in that apartment, in a 6-month period, I woke up in sleep paralysis at least 3 times. I remember waking up, and I could still hear the people talking in the living room. I wanted their attention, so I tried to scream, but a soft squeak came from my throat. I then tried to get their attention by banging on the wall. I wasn't able to lift my arm no higher than an inch from the mattress, and instead of pounding, I gently caressed the wall. I couldn't get their attention, so I gave up and went back to sleep. A year later, something completely extreme happened, which changed my perspective forever. The creature had chased me to my parents' house. This time too I woke up in a sleep paralysis, but in this case, I felt someone sitting on top of my stomach, with its full weight. It was completely invisible. I was also grabbed by my wrists and pressed against the mattress. When I woke up, my wrists were next to my head. It had apparently prepared me first, before attacking. When I realized something invisible was sitting on top of me, the adrenaline shot right through me. I then focused on my right arm to break free. I used all the strength I had to lift my arm. I came up very slowly, and then it let go after 3 seconds. The weight was gone, and I had broken myself out of sleep paralysis. By the way, this was the last time I had to deal with sleep paralysis. More than 15 years have passed, and I have never experienced it since. Apparently, I'm not an easy victim. However, I would still like to say something about sleep paralysis and its scientific explanation. The scientific explanation has been completely fabricated. It may sound logical, but that doesn't make it true. It is also known that science is against anything that has to do with religion, but the afterlife has nothing to do with religion at all. Life consists of the material and the spiritual, also known as body and soul. The conflict between the two factions is nothing more than a human creation. In nature, both go very well together, without conflict. The spiritual clone. Besides a demon, I've also had to deal with something entirely different. I call it a poltergeist. In this case, it is something that I created myself. After my studies, I went through a very dark period. I endured many illnesses, and no one was open to my story and my personal problems. At that time, I was better off talking to a wall, since it doesn't give shitty comments back. I had so much misunderstanding, frustration, and intense anger inside of me, for a long time in a small space, that the energy started to build up. At a certain point, it started to have a life on its own. I had accidentally created a spiritual clone, due to my intense anger. I lay in my bed, and before going to sleep, I always watched television. In this case, it was an old television. If you turn off these old televisions, you will hear them buzzing with static discharges. It is exactly that sound that my poltergeist took advantage of. Every time I turned off my television, the pattern started. This lasted for 3 months, until the pennies started to drop. I finally noticed that it was always the same order. It went the same clockwise circuit around my room, ending at the headboard of my bed. When the penny dropped, I decided to be smart and go for the ultimate test. When I turned off the television, I heard a static discharge coming from my computer. This was the go-ahead, and I started commanding it. I said, "Now hit the cupboard," and a tap immediately followed. Now my radio, and there was a tap. Now my television, and a tap followed. I ended with, "And now a tap above my head." That was the moment as if someone struck with a sledgehammer. A huge bang followed. I was shocked, but instead of fear, I was overcome with pure anger. I was sitting right next to my bed. I was extremely furious and said, "I know what you are, and I am not afraid of you. If I die, I'll be just like you, and then you and your ass are mine." It very much seems that during this outburst of anger, I had taken the spiritual clone back inside of me. Since then, I've never heard anything about it again. The activity stopped immediately. The spiritual clone is something I never heard about, and yet, it is extremely common. I have noticed that people who are in poor mental states often leave a spiritual footprint. If you have an environment where you put all those kinds of people together, think of a mental institution or prison, then you also understand that at some point it will naturally become haunted. So in this case we are not dealing with ghosts, but with negative residues. Such an environment inherently attracts negative spirits. They feel at home within all the negativity and feed off it. When it comes to ghosts, you can't banish them. No one can change the final judgment except the gods. However, when it comes to residues, you can purify these build-ups using sage. In short, you cannot solve the problem, but you can prevent it. Every mental institution and prison is a rotten place in a spiritual sense. By not purifying it, we curse the whole thing and the environment. This rule also applies the other way around. Places with an atmosphere of positivity can also influence us. People whose aura is open can sense these fears. Attempted takeover. The sleep paralysis is a kind of takeover, but I have also experienced this differently. This experience happened in my uncle's apartment during the month of December. It was an incredibly cold day. It was well below freezing, and it was starting to get freezing in the apartment. I decided to turn up the heater and close the curtains on the window to keep the warmth inside. Yet, it became increasingly colder. I had even lit a few candles, and before long I was sitting in the chair with my winter coat on. The apartment was almost sold, and I had no television to entertain me at that time. I had an old radio, but I couldn't find any familiar stations. All that came out of the speakers was old depressive music. I sat in the corner of the living room and steam came out of my mouth. Then something very extreme happened. Out of nowhere, I was overwhelmed with intense emotions of sadness, homesickness, despair, loneliness, anger, depression, and fear. I experienced 7 emotions at the same time, in the same moment. I've been through a lot mentally, but at that moment I was driven to madness instantly. I immediately realized that I was being attacked by the demon, and I immediately fled the house and spent the evening with someone else. This demon has made me experience pure negativity by influencing my brain. Kidney stones. As you can see, this topic is quite dark thus far. When it comes to the afterlife, I have many negative experiences, but there is also an experience that was beautiful and positive. In the past, I have had to deal with a kidney stone at least 5 times. During my first experience, I came into contact with someone who was also giving birth to a kidney stone. His name was Fritz. It was very striking that we were both suffering from the same symptoms at the same time. We were admitted at the same time, urinated blood at the same time, and had seizures at the same time. We were in sync. At one point, I was standing in the elevator with Fritz and suddenly a certain question came up. I wondered, what hurts more, giving birth to a child or giving birth to a kidney stone? Then he told me, how am I supposed to know that? Still, the question stuck with me. After returning to bed, he started to tell a story that he was laying in the same room, in the same bed and in the same place where his father had died. This rare fact I remember quite well. A day later, Fritz was released from the hospital and I got someone else in my room. This old man didn't have long to live, and I built up a good relationship for a short time. Not long after, I was also released from the hospital. A few days later, I had to come back for an appointment, and after that appointment, I got a very uneasy feeling. Something inside me indicated that I had to visit that old man, yet it felt very weird to me and strange to do. I got over the strange feeling and immediately went to visit, something I normally wouldn't have done. Then something special happened. I literally take one step into that room and out of the corner of my eye, a woman immediately sits up in her bed and, out of nowhere, says to me, "Do you know what hurts more? A kidney stone is a lot more painful than childbirth." It was a pure impulse from this woman. However, this woman was laying where Fritz was laying, and she gave me an answer to a question I had asked him in the elevator. In short, this answer came from Fritz, his deceased father, who temporarily took over that woman. Again, I only took one step into that room, and she started reacting immediately. The strange thing is that I didn't know that woman, and she didn't know who I was. Nirvana. There is one last experience I want to share that was very decisive in my consciousness towards the hereafter. The only thing is that I was not the one who managed to perform this miracle. It was one of my former housemates, who managed to photograph 2 dogs that had been dead for years. It is this experience that finally made me aware of the existence of the afterlife. As a true animal lover, I finally accepted the afterlife and its existence. Animals also go to heaven. Animals have a soul, just like us. I say this because I have encountered people of religion who claim that animals have no souls. During their experiment, my former housemate had captured a light-colored Labrador and a black-colored Labrador in full colors. It was physical evidence. The light Labrador lay across her lap and the black Labrador sat behind her back, looking into the camera from her shoulder. Both dogs posed very purposefully for just a split second. However, they could only be seen in photographs. This experience made me thrilled because it indicates that animals also go to the heavenly paradise. In fact, in her case, the dog served as a guide or protector. What made it possible was the family bond. It was her brother who took the photos. She has psychic abilities, and so does her brother. During the experiment, they came together as twins, and were shown a picture of their old dogs. Since then, I have been sharp and observant when it comes down to my surroundings. If something strange happens, I don't turn my back on it, but I try to explain it correctly. I no longer bury my head in the sand when it comes to the afterlife. I am awake.